Hello. The Divine Code reading for October 8th, pages 245 and 246. We are in the chapter, Practices that are Forbidden as Customs of Idol Worshippers. Halakha number 6. If one builds a house, or married a woman, or had a child, and then had success 3 times afterwards, he is permitted to consider this as a sign of his success. And it is permitted for him to set this as a good sign for future to depend upon. That is, he builds another house or marries another woman in a place and time where it is permitted to have more than one wife, or has another child, that he will have success, because this is not soothsaying. Rather, the person sees it as an assurance of divine assistance, a mazal. As it is correctly understood in classical Hebrew, a mazal is not a superstition, but a natural destiny which God has provided. Since this is a phenomena within natural creation, there is a logical basis for allowing oneself to rely upon it in the manner described. So the difficulty with mazal is that we don't have the ability today to see how it works. In the time of the first temple, there was the ability to see in the world around us the connections of things. If a person prays a certain way or behaves a certain way, then his crops will grow better. There are connections that exist. The difficulty is we don't have the ability today to see it. When the first temple was destroyed, sort of a fog came down upon the inner workings of Mazal. In the time of the first temple, there was a great temptation towards idolatry, because people could see how the Mazal worked, and they could see how to manipulate it to their benefit, and that led to idolatry. Now the system still works. It's just that today we can't see how it works. So if the person does certain things and he sees afterwards an effect, and 3 times creates a pattern. The first time something just happens. You don't really know why it happened. The second time it's a coincidence. The third time we see a pattern has developed. If we can see a pattern is developed, it's not necessarily 3 times, and then it's fine. But if it comes to the point where we can identify a pattern, that one thing is related to another thing, then we can start to rely upon that's how the natural world functions. And it has to be something we can actually connect. It's just not just random occurrences and we find whatever we want to connect with it, but it's actually clearly identifiable as such. Then it can be relied upon. Rashi on Tractate Kulin 95b, Rimet Yoredea 176.4. I'm sorry, 179.4. Likewise, if one tests a medical charm 3 times and has success each time, such as through an amulet worn by a sick person, even though he doesn't know how it might work, but only that it is a repeatable good charm, it is permitted to use it based on this. Tosafot on Tractate Baba Metzia 27b, Responsive Rashba, chapter 4:13 and 825. Darki Moshe Yoredea, chapter 179, Rambam, The Laws of Shabbat, 1913, Prish, HaMishnah, Isukin, chapter 4, and Tractate Shabbos, chapter 6. Usually today we don't think in terms of sort of good luck charms. There is a Torah basis for it, and that's probably why they have so many footnotes to relate to this, just to show it as such. If it is something that's repeatable, it works. We don't know why it works. It works. Just like we don't know why building a house might cause some good things to happen. We don't know why. We discover it works. We notice it repeatedly that it works, and therefore, okay, it works. So the medical charm works. We don't know why, but it works. Then it can be relied upon. Because that's considered part of the natural world, the way the world is created. It is topic number 7. It is permitted to ask a child who is learning the Hebrew scriptures. So this is a child that is serious about, this isn't just some random kid that's learning a Bible verse. This is a child that's engaged in study of Torah. We can ask a child who's learning the Hebrew scriptures to recite a verse of his choice and act upon it, since this may be considered a mild type of prophecy. In Rima Yeridea, chapter 179, Taz and Shak, I assume Yeridea, chapter 179, 5. This is unlike the implication from Rambam's words in the laws of the worship of stars and idols, 11:5. One who asks a child, which imply that it is only permitted as a sign for the past, but we may not do so in the future. So there was a time when a person could ask a child who is seriously engaged in the study of Torah to give him a Bible verse, and then he can use that Bible verse to base decisions on. Now, if we could take Bible verses to tell us to do anything. We got to be very careful about that. But there's an innocence to the child that makes the child who's studying Torah open to this mild form of prophecy, and therefore we can ask the child. There's a question as to whether or not that was something that was a couple thousand years ago, and there's in the Talmud there's examples of this a couple thousand years ago being done. Whether or not that would still operate today, there's a question. But it's still something. There's a mild form of prophecy there. The difficulty is knowing how to interpret it, which may have been more possible. I would suggest it's the interpretation, the ability to interpret may be more difficult today. Topic number 8. It is forbidden to practice divination or to ask advice from one who practices this. Divination consists of performing particular actions in order to clear one's mind of all thoughts and matters, to concentrate transcendentally until one starts predicting the future by saying, for example, such and such will or will not happen, or it is fitting to do such and such, or beware of such and such. Such diviners touch or feel stones or sand to concentrate upon this. Some crouch on the ground while moving or shouting. Some stare into a mirror or lantern, and others hold a stick in their hands, leaning on it and knocking on the ground with it. until their minds have cleared. And then they start speaking. This is what one of the prophets said derivatively. Hosea chapter 4, verse 12. My people ask for counsel from a piece of wood, and their staff declares to them. Rambam, the Laws of the Worship of Stars and Idols, chapter 11, discusses this. So, this person is attuning himself to something in the world. He is not working, he is developing a prophetic situation, but not through proper adherence to God's Torah or to God's system. He's not. He's operating outside of the Torah in order to reach the state of prophecy. That's forbidden, and it's forbidden to listen to him. Topic number 9: a deceitful illusionist is one who deceives the eyes of others and deludes them by appearing to do a supernatural thing, which he does not really do. One who performs acts of sorcery is called a sorcerer, or witch. Both of these practices are forbidden. Rambam, Laws of the Stars, Worship and Idols, chapter 11, Shulchan Aruch, Yoreh De'ah, 179:15. Rambam writes in Guide to the Perplexed, volume 3, chapter 37, page 358. Since sorcery is surely idol worship, but it is done in a strange and unusual way, which the masses do not use for their gods, compared to the Oiv and Yedonim topic 2 above. The opinion of the Rambam is that Me'onim, translated here as Me'onim, translated here as deceitful illusionist, is one who determines the future through astrology. Has been left out since Shulchan Aruch Yoreh De'ah, chapter 178, omits this and rules like the rabbinic authorities that hold that Me'onim is only a deceitful illusionist who deceives other eyes. Based on this argument, Rambam would rule that it is forbidden for Gentiles to practice astrology, whereas the Shulchan Aruch would rule that it is permitted, as is the opinion of Ramban on Deuteronomy 18:9. Rashba, mentioned above in footnote 338, which was the earlier, that's the response of Rashba, chapter 413 and 825. And Ron on Tractate Sanhedrin 65b, ruled that astrology is permitted even for Jews. Abraham was an expert astrologer, as stated in Tractate Nidarim 32, from which we see that this practice is permitted for Gentiles. So there's a question as to whether or not astrology would be considered an illusion or if it's considered a science. Rambam considers it to be an illusion. And if you open up a newspaper and see the astrology page, it's clearly an illusion. The other authorities are referring to it as a science, such as Abraham practiced in his days. And there's a world difference between the two. So they're not really arguing about it. They're kind of arguing today it's very difficult to see the stars properly, to understand how any of it works. Just as earlier with the understanding how building a house could give one good fortune. We don't know how it works. We really don't know how to read the stars properly today. In Abraham's time and in the time of the first Beis Hamikdash, it was possible to look up at the sky and actually see the functioning of the clockwork. Today we can't see it. So it's that's what Rambam is referring to as today, and these other authorities are referring to, in general, it does function. It's a question of whether or not we can expect ourselves to understand how these things work. Shulchan Aruch Yoreh De'ah 179.1 rules against asking advice of stargazers or those who use lots or cards, as it says in Deuteronomy 18:13. You shall be complete before God. This is a rule for Jews. Gentiles are not forbidden to follow astrology, but they are forbidden to take advice from lots or cards and such. On this distinction, it is clear from Tractate Shabbat 156 that there is a mazal, a divinely planned destiny for a Gentile, which he may investigate, and the prohibition of astrology cited above is only for Jews, who are commanded about the oneness of God and not to put any faith in anything else at all. In contrast, there are opinions that Gentiles are not forbidden to believe in a false idea of partnership with God. And surely, by this opinion, they are not forbidden to act based on their investigation of a mazal. Even Rambam, who forbids the belief in a divine partnership, says that this only regarded to belief in the other entity as a deity. But he would agree that to investigate and act on one's mazal through natural means, that is, by astrological calculations, is permitted for a Gentile. So if we are, well, first of all, the people today that do these things, 99.9% of the time, they don't have a clue what they're doing. They're following a custom that was passed down, and it kind of sort of works. So if it works 3 times, I guess we can maybe kind of sort of, but it's not really, they don't understand how it works. And it's difficult to follow these things. In the case of a house, it's incidental. We notice it afterwards. We realize afterwards that it kind of sort of works. We're not basing it, our original decision to build a house on, oh, if I build a house, then my work will prosper. I mean, maybe it will, maybe it won't. We don't know. Afterwards, if we notice that things have happened, then for that person, they can start relying upon it. So how does a person first build a house? Is because they need a house. How does a person first start looking into astrology? Well, there's no logical reason to start looking into astrology. So there's a difficulty there. There's a logical reason to build a house. There's not a logical reason to look into astrology. We don't really know how any of this works. And so there's no real on-ramp for a person to start doing this. Once they start doing it, then maybe they can start benefiting from it. You know, just like a lot of there's certain things you're not supposed to do. Once you do it, you can benefit from it. So that's kind of where it's looking at here. Now, for a pious among the nations non-Jew, someone who signed up for the Torah system as a non-Jew, he's not allowed shituf. That's an issue. So he's not allowed to get involved in this to begin with. But once he's involved with it, if let's say there's a person that's involved with it, and then he rejects, he decides to sign up for Torah, be a functional Noahide, and stops believing in this shituf. If he's already established a pattern, it might be possible that he can continue with it as long as he understands that it's all part of the oneness of God. That's possible. But otherwise, I can't imagine how he would engage in this to begin with, especially since we really can't see clearly how it works. And even the people that are experts in this really don't know how it works. They think they do, but they really don't. Topic number 10. This is from tomorrow's reading, but I'm doing it today because it's part of the same flow of ideas. Astrology is not forbidden for Gentiles. That is to discern what is one's divine mazal based upon divinely planned destiny, and to proceed with an action when it is apparent from the mazal that he will have success, or to refrain from an action when the mazal is opposing him. It's based upon the previous note. So this is a murky area. I would recommend against it just because it's not really understood how it works. There's 7 planets. Earth is not a planet. The moon and sun are planets. If that doesn't make any sense to you, then I would avoid it altogether. If it does make sense to you, then maybe you have some awareness, but I don't recommend it because it's not an area that anybody understands. We should stick to things we understand. If we build a house and it works, that's good. But basing it upon the stars, it's when the third base of Migdash is built, perhaps at that point it'll be apparent, we'll be able to see stuff again. But at the current time, it's too cloudy to, it's like going through the fog in a car going at a speed limit. It's not safe when it's foggy. Thank you.